Live, back at it once again. Welcome, everyone. Today, so this week, I have done two other live streams. On Monday, I did one on Chinese, so writing Chinese. On Tuesday, I did a Let's Learn Russian, in which I reviewed some of my declensions and conjugations. Wednesday, actually, we spent creating a new long form video that hopefully will be posted soon, but I have no idea when because I got to edit the bloody thing. And then today I thought, well, I've done the two languages that I'm studying, Chinese and Russian. Well, what about if I focused some on the language that kind of employs me, English? And I was of two minds of where to go with this, basically because I mean, as much as I work in the ESL industry, English as a second language industry, I don't really teach very much these days. I work with private clientele instead, and not in like any bad manner. It's more like I'm more in the consultation business than anything else, where I talk to people, we suss out their issues, and we sort of point them in a direction. And since I am part of a private company, I'm actually not supposed to talk too much about what goes on within the job itself, which is fine because I don't think many people would be very interested in what goes on, to tell you the truth. But that being the case, outside of it, so I don't do any extra teaching or anything technically or legally. I'm not allowed to, within the mainland of China, to pursue any other employment opportunities due to visa restrictions, which you'll find out. Your contract will typically state this. It has to do with sponsorship, that the company that sponsors your visa, you are basically attached to, and they're responsible for you. So if shit goes down, your company can get in trouble if you are holding that bag of shit. So that's pretty typical in a lot of contracts and countries and stuff like that. Now there's a very large gray market as well. And one gray market, actually, I wouldn't even say this is a gray market in terms of how it pertains to the mainland of China or most ESL jobs and contracts out there. It's that you can work online. However, there are some countries, Indonesia being one of them, Turkey is another one that I've heard about, and I'm sure there's quite a few others. I think even Europe has several European countries have restrictions on what you can do online in terms of teaching without having a proper visa. So you'd actually have to apply for an e-visa or some sort of digital visa. Like I think a lot of the backpackers have it, or the digital nomads who live in Bali. They have these specific visa types wherein you are allowed to basically live in the country for an extended period of time, a couple months, and do whatever you do online. But then I'm not sure if you have to remit taxes to the government. I don't think you do, but that visa serves as a bit of a tax fee for your business or your company or whatever it is that you're doing online. Now, all that to be said, I've never applied for one of these before. These didn't exist 15 years ago when I started traveling. They didn't exist 10 years ago when I was bumming around Southeast Asia. They've sort of developed in the last 10, 15 years, last 5 or 6 years, I guess. I know some people have them. I personally don't know anybody who has these things, so it's not something I can really speak to very much right now. The method that I've pursued for a lot of my ESL work and working around the world has been basically the direct method, which is that pick a company, pick a university, pick a school, apply for it, and go through the whole application process of not just for the company, but also for the visas and stuff like that. Now, typically, visas will take a long time. I think for South Korea was 3 or 4 months. China was 6 months. And that was Australia. I didn't teach, although I could have. I worked on farms instead. Australia, I think, was pretty quick. It was 2 or 3 weeks, I think, and that was just a formality of making sure that I wasn't a complete wash up of a human being, and that I did have some cash that could either get me out of the country to at least Bali, or or back to Canada should things not happen, not go the way that we wanted them, or that I'd want them, or the country would want them as well. So with all of that, the vast majority of visas that you're going to get, like in China, it's a Type Z or a Type Z visa, which is the American way of calling it, and they do take quite a long time. They require quite a few steps as well, ranging from police background checks in your hometown or your state or province. You'll also probably need a federal background check. In Canada, it's the RCMP. So you'd need one from your local department, police department. You need one from like a federal department as well. And that's just to check if like you're on any sort of criminal lists, like so like abusers, former jailbirds and stuff like that, making sure that you're not on any wanted list as well. They do a lot of vetting before they give you the visa. The other thing with that, and don't take that scratching of the nose as sort of implication of any sort of FBI, oh, well, look at he's guilty. No, 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 no. The visa application process it does basically three things. One, it makes sure that you're not a troublemaker. And by troublemaker, I mean like the greatest possible sort of broadest application of that word. You're not going to go stir up shit. Okay. Number two, it makes sure that you're qualified. And this is something that people who've never traveled or worked in another country, it's hard to appreciate this, that when you see an immigrant or someone comes over to your country and they are working a job that potentially you could have, the issue is that they've gone through such a process, most of them anyway. Some of them, of course, don't. But usually there's such a vetting process, checking your university education, your bank accounts, and even your family records as well, like sort of your immediate family. Do you have kids? Do you have a wife? Do you have an ex-wife? Do you have in-laws that can help you in the country or outside of the country? And so that sort of vetting process happens in the visa application process for a lot of these jobs. And third is basically to make sure that you have, I'm going to say, so we've got make sure you're not crazy and going to cause shit. We've got make sure that you can do the job, your qualifications. So checking that your university degree is actually real. And the third one, I guess the third one would be making sure that, what would the third one be? Making sure you're not crazy, making sure you have the money, I should say. Making sure that you're not going to come to the country and then default to social insurance. Canada is known for this. Australia, United States, kind of, but not really. And a lot of countries will check your bank statements, check your money, your cash reserves, basically, or your assets, to make sure that you're not going to come in and start sucking off the taxpayer. And I don't mean literally; I mean through the bank accounts and through the social services, rather than directly on the street. All that is to say, making sure you have a few of these things sort of lined up, and that if they bring you over to work a job, then you can actually do this job. You're not going to be a liability to the country and to the culture or whatever it is. But then also making sure that if something happens along the way, that you have the means to get out of it, basically. One second, I gotta make sure I got this right. Where is focus? Why are you doing this? There, good. All right. So those are the three basic things that a visa, like the visa vetting process, will do when you're coming over to work in just about any country. It's not China specific. It's a lot of countries around the world. Now, does that mean you can move to a country and find a job on the street, basically, or like basically walk into a private institute and can you apply for a job? Yes, you can. It's matter of fact, this probably happens far more than the tax system or the legal system wants to admit. And teaching English is not a get-rich scheme in any stretch of the imagination. People can get rich teaching English or teaching languages. People can get rich running schools that employ teachers and attract students, which is like a marketing mechanism, basically. But the vast majority of English teachers, ESL teachers, or any sort of language teacher, they're not doing it for the money. And I don't mean that they do it for the love of learning and stuff like that. They're doing it because they can. They do it because it's within their skill set and probably because it's easy to do for them. Not everybody can teach a language. Not everybody can teach English, even though it seems like it's possible. One thing that China did back in 2021, 2022, it was called the double reduction policy, where they basically put the clamp down on a lot of private institutes that were offering private education. Now, this slammed the ESL world because a lot of what was happening was that these private, in Korea, they call them hagwons. In China, what did they call them? I can't remember. It was cram schools, basically. And it was like after school programs that would employ teachers to help students learn a specific subject, whether it was English, another language, a musical instrument, math, sciences, you pick it, you name it, it was all there. Now, the problem with some of these groups, these private institutes, was that they were offering financing deals at interest rates that would basically make it impossible for the family to ever pay it back. They were acting like credit card companies, that a vast majority of credit card companies, and that's what sort of became the big issue. That a lot of people, a lot of families, were putting their faith and their finances into these institutes, into these education, the education by the institute, and then not seeing a return on the investment. The ROI just wasn't there. And so that got slammed in 2021, 2022. And that meant a lot of teachers, ESL teachers, or private institute teachers, were left without a job. Even today, the big one was XDF, Xingdongfang. I think they have gone into online commodity selling. That was the last I heard. I don't know if they're still doing education. You can still get private institute jobs here in China, but you do have to be qualified for it. Typically, you need an education degree, a bare minimum of a bachelor's degree of something, BSc or BA, whichever. You probably need an ESL certificate of some sort, like a TEFL, TESOL, a Trinity Certisol, or a CELTA, anything along those lines. That will certainly help your effort to get a job at a private institute. However, the only reason you'd go to a private institute is because you aren't committed to, or maybe you can't get a job at a university or even at a proper school. So the international schools in China and around the world have even higher standards for application than the private institutes. Now, the private institutes probably receive a lot of applications, but they're a little bit more desperate because private institutes have a bit of a shady reputation. They're more after the dollar than the education, whereas the international schools, they build themselves on the reputation that their students are going to XYZ university over here. These people got scholarships, which just means free money from whoever, and that their students, their school has been in operation for 50, 60, 100 years and is allied with this sort of university. So students typically go to this university instead, and that sort of thing. So international schools have a bit more of a reputation to go off of and to build and to maintain than private institutes do. Now, if you are qualified, I mean, I'd highly suggest people go work at a university. That's typically what I would do if I wasn't doing the private consultation work that I'm doing now. I would certainly go back to teaching at a university or working at a university instead, or possibly private corporate work. I could probably do that, although I don't really like the idea of going to an office. To tell you, working from home has been phenomenal and has changed my life, to tell you the truth. I love it. I don't know why anyone puts up with going to a corporate office. I guess there are things to say about going to a corporate office and everything, but not if your meetings can be emails and your job can literally be done anywhere in the world. I don't think there's really a need to be going to an office every day. That being the case, university positions here in China and in parts of Asia, so far as I know, typically require a master's degree. If you're going to be teaching language specific, so ESL, like English as a second language, they're going to require a TESOL certificate, more than likely a CELTA certificate. Now, I have the CELTA. I fortunately passed it many years ago, I did not pass the Delta, which is basically a step up from there and is a diploma rather than a certificate, which is the British way of saying it's equivalent to a master's degree, but not bestowed from a university. So the Delta, although the CELTA and Delta, Cambridge English Language, sorry, no, it's not Cambridge, Certificate of English Language to Teaching Adults and Diploma of English Language Teaching to Adults, are both offered by Cambridge University. So it is part of the university's language and culture offerings, but it's not a university course. It's franchised, standardized, globalized, which means that any institution around the world can use it and implement it as long as they follow certain standard procedures, which Cambridge loves to do. Like a lot of Cambridge, Oxford, I'm sure there's one. The Chinese one is the Hanban Institute, where they have a teaching Chinese as a second language, TCSL, something along those lines. A lot, even like Russian has it, teaching Russian as a foreign language, TRFL, or teaching trickle, TRKL, I think it is. I can't remember what the that K stands for. Communist. So there are these different certificates that you can get. You can become certified to teach these languages. And again, it's not just English. There's other standardized courses that you can take for other languages. French has one, Spanish has one. I'm not sure if Portuguese does, but Russian definitely does. Chinese has one. I'm sure Arabic has one as well, probably Egyptian Arabic. So depending on sort of your goal as a language teacher, as a linguist, as an educator, you should be looking at some of those language-specific, language teaching-specific certifications in order to buff up your resume. Now, that is above and beyond your your bachelor's degree, your university degree, which is, so if you have a bachelor's of English literature, oh, great, or classics, yeah, something like any bachelor of arts degree. They will look at that. Okay, that's your basic buy-in, but then on top of that, you're going to need an ESL certificate as well. And I'm not sure what it's like for other languages, if you need a bare minimum of a university degree plus certificate or something along those lines. China typically values more education than less. If you are a PhD holder looking and watching this and don't want to teach English, you don't have to. Like, this is the one thing. Like, I do meet a lot of doctors and professors or PhD holders who are skeptical of coming over to China, and rightly so, for a couple of reasons. One of them is that they don't want to teach English, which is the typical standard sort of idea that if you're going to go to any travel or the world, then you're going to go teach English, which is not seen as a very serious career move at all. Number two, they would be suspect of working in this country, in China, or some countries that have a reputation for not being entirely academically honest. Now, I can't really get into that too much. I know that there has been a lot of issues with Chinese publications, and certainly I don't think you'd have to go very far to find some of that information online. You do have to do your research on the institute that you want to be part of. That being said, if you want some of the big names to look at, any of the big names in Shanghai, Beijing, even Guangzhou, those three cities would be huge in terms of having the proper universities. And of those three cities, if you don't want to go to Shanghai and you want a more authentic Chinese experience, Beijing, Renmin University, Tsinghua University, is it Minzu University? And there's one more, Beijing Daxue as well, Beijing University. Those three, so Renmin, Tsinghua, and Beijing University, huge universities. They have higher standards for their scholars, the academics, PhD holders. I'm not even sure if I can get a job at one of those universities. I'd like to think I could, but maybe if they're like watching me doing live streams, they'd be like, nah, we don't need people like you here. All that is to say that Beijing does have some very good universities. that aren't of the type that would be sort of on the shady side of things, where because China does have a lot of universities. If you go to Wikipedia for any country that you are looking to work in, this is how I found my job in China. Is you pick your country and then list of universities in that country, and then just start going through that list. And you will have to vet it. You will have to go through that list and ask yourself which ones look good. Which city do you want to live in? Because there could be university. Like, to give an example, the Jiangxi Institute of Technology University, like, Jiangsu Commodity Exchange Technical University. When, yeah, they might offer you a job, but you're literally, first of all, do you know where Zhengzhou is? Second of all, do you want to live there? Third of all, where is that university in relation to the city? Because some of these universities can be like far out of the main part of the city, which means you will be very isolated in terms of like not just your job, but also your sort of social life as well. There might not be many foreigners, other expats from in that area, which can be exciting. If it's your first time living overseas, that actually can be a very good way to learn how to be an expat and to experience a full on foreign experience, because you are going to be the foreigner. It won't be easy though. There's going to be a 6 or 7 month honeymoon period. And then after that, if you haven't really grasped the language, if you don't know the language, it can get very grating, and you'll start rubbing up against people in all the wrong ways. Because that at that point, by month 6 and 7, the locals, the people around you, will sort of assume that that you'll sort of start getting things, how things work, and the initial sort of graciousness that they might show, and possibly the the whole idea of, well, that was how it was 6 months ago, but now we have to sort of start looking at things this way, like apartment contracts, water bill payments, cell phone contracts. Well, can you help me do this? Can you help me do this? Things like that, where that can change over time as well. And maybe people don't know how to deal with it. So at first they're able to help you quite a bit, but then later on they might not be able to help you as much. Now, in terms of picking a country, the I guess it used to be that like Japan was huge in the 90s. Uh, Korea was big in the 2000s and early 2010s. China has seen its big time probably until the middle of the country. A lot of people that you talk to, a lot of the expats that you might talk to now, there'd be 3 years that they would mention: 2008, 2014, and then just got here. Basically, those are your three time stands. If you meet another one, then it's usually I got here in 1990, and that means that they've been in the country for 30 years. That's a long time to be in a country. Now, China, yay or nay? I say yay. It's been a pretty good country, COVID notwithstanding. Was any country good or fair during those times? I don't know. I would be interested in actually hearing about how English teachers in other parts of the world fared during the pandemic times, because like, again, I was basically voluntold to work from home during the pandemic. It got to the point, like, if you're not vaccinated and you want to work and you're not going to leave the country, then you basically have to work from home, because the restrictions or the requirements for you to get in anywhere during the pandemic were just so much to deal with that it became just almost not untenable, but a pain in the ass. And it would just be easier for everybody involved if you just worked from home, because then you didn't have to deal with nucleic acid tests and stuff like that. So, but that is all past us now, hopefully, and that we don't have to deal with that again for the foreseeable future. Now that kind of brings up the sort of the idea, the issue of like, well, so is it a good idea to go teach English overseas? I say yes. It's not a serious career for most people. It's seen as a career break for a lot of people, whether they're just graduating from college, whether they are quitting a job and trying to transition into something else with their work, or they're retired from their job. they've been working there 20 plus years and like this, I'm done with this industry. I want to go try something different. I'd like to travel and not lose too much money in the process. Teaching English and teaching languages can certainly do that. What's the difference between teaching English face to face, like going to a country, going through the visa gauntlet, and teaching online? Well, teaching online, it can be done anywhere. It's much more portable, requires a decent internet connection, although most times you don't, doesn't really matter. And if most language learners are sort of, if I can go off of my own language learning experience online, it students are very understanding if the internet doesn't work. Not a lot of them are going to complain about your internet connection or their internet connection or whatever. Like, you can also reschedule class. Now, some people, and I've done this before too, since I am what you could consider a working professional, that if it doesn't work and they say, well, can we schedule this, this and this time or another 15 minutes? I go, no, I can't, because I either have another class, another appointment, or I have another job to get to. And I booked off this time. The next 15 minutes, I have to go do something else. So that can be an issue if you're dealing with working professionals. Professional students, such as like people who are university age and are learning English as a second language to either pass IELTS or TOEFL or whatever it is, they might have a little bit more leeway in their time, contrasted with a parent, like someone who's a mother or father, or a working professional who's holding down a job and has meetings and clients, or simply just doesn't want to be on all the time and would like to just chill out at home instead. In terms of which country you should go to, well, I mentioned Japan was good, was hot in the 90s, Korea in the 2000s and early 2010s. China was good up until about 2017, 2018. After that, there seemed to be a little bit more of a shift, a change, and that culminated in the 2021 double reduction policy. China's still a decent place to go. Korea, I know two people who are still living in Korea. There might actually be a few more still living in Korea after all these years, still living there. I know some people who've moved to Japan after being in China. Pardon me. But Japan still seems to be a huge draw. I'm not sure how easy it is to get a job there. Middle East, I consider that to be sort of your the retirement home for English teachers, because that's where a lot of really experienced people and highly qualified people who want to go work at a university. It's a bit more luxurious compared to the hagwons and the private institutes throughout Southeast Asia, which are like a dime a dozen, basically, especially if you go down to Southeast Asia, Thailand, Cambodia. You're not going to make much money there. Vietnam's an up-and-coming country as well. Indonesia, Philippines, you good luck trying to get a job there. But then also places like South America, Latin America, Brazil, Argentina. Those would be certainly interesting lives to live as expats. They might not have as much money as the Middle East. And certainly if you are European, finding an English teaching job within Europe is easier for you than if you were Canadian or American looking to go to Europe to teach. That would be a lot more difficult. I know a lot of European countries, I think the working travel visa is typically cut off at age 26 or age 26, I think, was the lowest level you could go. Australia had it until you're 30, which was good because that's what I went on. But the overall, trying to get a job as an English teacher in the European Union is very difficult if you're not from within the European Union somewhere. Hello, England. That's basically what it's going to, Ireland or somewhere along those lines. What sort of qualifications do you need? Also, just to finish that thought, if you're going, the Middle East can be a good place to go. Now, I don't know too many people who go there first. Typically, a lot of people will go to either South America or Southeast Asia first, get some experience, figure out whether or not they like it or whether or not they want to go back to their old life, and then also develop some qualifications as well. And if in that time they don't get married and have children and lock themselves down in some way, then they might, either with their family or possibly after divorce or on their own, go to the Middle East and find other employment there. Middle East has a reputation for having some like good universities, but the students aren't as uh, focused as in parts of Asia, China, Japan, Korea being China being particularly very focused, very intense students, like very competitive, very fierce competition for these students. So they have to excel. Whereas in the Middle East, you don't have that same reputation of students and of the universities. Again, that's not to say that the universities aren't good or that the jobs aren't good or the students aren't good, but you'd have to do your own research as to what you're getting yourself into if you are going to be going to the Middle East to teach. Of course, that can be said for just about any university at all. What sort of qualifications do you need? Typically, it's going to be an ESL certificate of some sort. Now, whether it's offered by Cambridge, by Oxford, those are your big ones, or your university, like an MA in. I actually posted. Where did I post this? It's on my channel somewhere in the community tab, I think, or one of these, where another commenter chimed in and basically said they had regretted taking the Delta module courses and the Delta itself because it just was a waste of money and waste of time. The masters in English or masters in TESOL would actually be not just more highly valued, also seem to teach more in terms of, well, I think it just opened up more doors because a university degree will be looked at more highly in a more general sense than a certificate or a diploma in teaching English. And what I mean by that is that if you have the CELTA is a standard intro teaching, ESL teaching, English language teaching certificate. The Delta has a reputation of being difficult on the same level of a master's degree, but not the same amount of credibility because it doesn't have the same recognition, despite it being backed by Cambridge. And all that means is that if you do the diploma of English language teaching for adults, the Delta, you might not every employer will understand what it is. They'll understand what the CELTA is typically. That one's pretty normal, but the Delta, they might be like, we have no idea what this even is. Like, sure, okay, great, good. You say that you can teach English, awesome. You say that you want to be in administration and help develop course materials, blah 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 blah. Fine, great. We still don't know what the Delta is. We'll have to Google that, and Google's blocked here, so I have to do something else. The master's degree, not only that, with the Delta, you can fail it, and there are a few channels, there are a few people who like. I failed the Delta Module 1, and I have not pursued it since. I don't care to. I don't need to. It just doesn't bother me at all. And nor, I think more importantly, I don't really feel like packing my apartment, which then means that I'm not going to move countries or move cities anytime soon. But that means also that it sort of has an implication that if I ever do try to move away from Beijing, what's going to happen? Like, do I need to skill up because or upskill or whatever it is? Since I am becoming an older English teacher, an older man, that despite the experience I have, would it be better to have the experience on a Delta or experience in a master's or just the experience? I can say that based on these couple of comments that happened on my channel a couple weeks ago, it seems that the master's degree in general is better, is more favored. You can't fail the master's degree as easily. Like literally, you have to be plagiarizing everything in order to fail it. The Delta is expensive, time consuming, and you can fail it, and they don't give you any reason why. Cambridge loves to do that for some reason. And also, the people I know and who I've worked with in China and around the world over the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years, those who have a Delta have all said it's useless. It doesn't do anything. Those who had the choice between the Delta and the Masters took the Masters instead and are happier and are now teaching the CELTA course, which is bizarre. I don't understand how that works. But doing the master's degree typically or it seems to pay off better or more than the like your Delta. I looked at the Delta not so much as a career advancement that would open doors for me. I more looked at it as a chance to read a bunch of books on theory and practical aspects of language acquisition, not necessarily teaching, language acquisition. So, understanding how a learner actually absorbs a language. And I did it for that reason, so I could understand better how, not how I could apply this to a classroom, because again, I don't teach very much. It's more of how do I understand learning languages. So, if I'm doing a language vlog, how am I learning a language? What am I learning? What am I putting myself through? And how are the teachers that I'm using in my own language studies? What methods are they employing? Are they good? Are they bad? What sort of styles are they using? What tools are they using? I don't think I've ever judged a teacher based on her qualifications. Now, italki is an app that I use quite a bit. Online platform, find a lot of teachers on there. Some are good, some are bad. Actually, not even bad teachers. Some just aren't as effective, or our styles don't match up as much, or typically our schedules don't always match up because they might be in some part of the world that just doesn't match up with my Beijing time. Now, out of all the teachers that have had the most effective teachers that I've seen and that I've experienced are the ones that, for me personally, are very uh, conversational. So they talk, they're patient, they listen to me make all my mistakes, and they struggle painfully through my slow speech, which is horrible, I know. But as a language teacher, it's a grind that you just have to basically go through. And then, third of all, that are able to, again, for me, pull out grammar parts that they can then explain and then build up. And this bothers me, and this is one of the reasons I want to do the Delta course, is to figure out. And I know that the Delta has there's three parts: Module 1, 2, and 3. Module 1, you deal mostly with terminology, so the theory of how things are done. Module 2 is your practicum, so you're actually put into a classroom and have to develop class materials and teach something, and you're assessed on this, and it's the longest portion as well, and typically not paid for by companies. And number 3 is the needs analysis um, module, wherein you basically you develop your own course curriculum based on the needs of a learner, or a learner profile that you have to also find and assess at some point as well. So theory, practical, and then again practical, but curriculum practical as well. That's why I want to do the Delta, was to learn how to, in particular, how to parse an English sentence. And the reason why I want to do that is because a lot of English language learners, they ask why, an incessant why. Like, well, why is it that way? Why is it that? Why is there a final S on this? Why is the will and won't? Why does it change forms? Well, what's the rule for this grammar? And blah 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 blah. And I'll tell you, I couldn't explain this. I still couldn't explain it, but there are books written on this. Michael Swan has a good book on it. And the other guy who is majorly famous in the whole ESL sphere, in ESL industry, is Scott Thornbury. He's written, I have his page up here on Amazon. He's written so many books about language acquisition, how to teach grammar, speaking, reading, writing, all the skills and things like that. So Michael Swan would be a good one to find. Scott Thornbury would be a good one. Penny Ur is another good one. And there are quite a few. If you don't want to do the Delta, or if the Delta seems intimidating for you, and as this one commenter pointed out, it would be it would be better for you to go to the Cambridge website, the Delta website. I'll put a link in the show notes for this live stream, and find the reading list. Matter of fact, I could actually create the reading list. I do have the PDFs for you. Show you as well. Let's see if we can do this. Which one? Square, entire screen there. Okay, we'll share this. That way you can sort of see what I'm seeing. Now, here are the different books that are available for the Delta course that about the modules handbook, and we just want the reading list. This is it. Now, the reading list is probably the most important part of this whole thing, because you can find out which books you need to read, which ones that you're going to be tested on, basically. This one, very good. Light Brown, is it Peter? Or no, it's Patricia Light Brown and Nina Espada. This one was a very good book, How Languages Are Learned. I like this one. I actually read that book, the whole thing, to which another candidate or whoever was like, why are you reading the books? Just do practice tests. And he was right. He passed. I failed. But again, Delta Module 1 and 2 reading list. This won't change very much for Module 3. This is probably the best part of the Delta, is finding out that books like these are written, and that any question or concern you have about teaching English as a second language, of learning about grammar, like how to actually teach English grammar so your students understand it, so you can understand the grammar and teach it to someone else in a way that's like, hey, I actually understand how that works too now. You learn more about the English language. This reading list is a very good one to go to. They have like, how many grammar books? Here's Thornbury. Again, he has 4 books here. Grammar, Beyond the Sentence. Oh, you do not need to talk about discourse analysis. I think this is made by theoreticians and universities who are trying to be hoity-toity, high-end, and I'm not sure if it's working. Uncovering Grammar, How to Teach Grammar. These ones are good as well. Michael Swan right here, Practical English Usage, a good book for there. M. Parrott, is it Michael Parrott? Grammar for English Language Teachers, very good book as well. And there's one other one, Penny Ur, that one will be okay as well. How English Works, this is okay. At the bottom here, grammar practice book. Is there another grammar book? No, there is one more book I am thinking of. About English, that's what it's called. It's called About English Assessment. Where are you? Where are you? No. Age, who was this? About English. Can I find it? About Language. There we go. This one, again, Scott Thornbury, About Language, Tasks for Teachers of English. That was a very good book because that is basically what the Delta is based on. The Delta will test you, especially Module 1, will test you on your knowledge of how to talk like an academic English teacher, basically. So your terminology, your concepts, and all the different whatsums and industry jargon that's used to describe verbs and how people learn languages. But then also in this book, About Language, Tasks for Teachers of English, he shows you how to parse an English language, and it's phenomenal. I was like, I can't believe some people actually do this for a living, where they will break down an English sentence, and that students would like this. I guess this is my biggest concern, and my biggest question was that my biggest problem was that when a student asked, well, why is it this way? What's the rule? Were they looking for an explanation, like a textbook explanation of, well, that's because when you have a modal verb like this and you have an auxiliary, it goes like this and goes like that? Are they looking for that explanation? Or are they looking for something better than, I don't know, that's the way it is? Which is such a common response if you're an English language teacher, and as I found out, a Chinese teacher as well, because some of them, I think, again, they're doing the job because it's easy for them to do, not necessarily because they love the idiosyncrasies of Chinese grammar or anything like that. Now, again, Delta reading list module 1, module 2 reading list, very good to go through. This is 7 pages. I will put this in the show notes for this stream so you can take a look at it. It is available online as well through Cambridge. You can Google this, Delta Module 1 and Module 2 reading list. They have there's a whole website dedicated to this thing, and it's a huge moneymaker program for Cambridge and its affiliates. There are also the other thing that if you're going to do the CELTA or the Delta certificates, diplomas, programs, whatever's courses, I highly recommend you search out a few online blogs to learn how other people, where people failed and where they did right, and what their study methodologies were to pass the courses, because it is, you can fail, which will cost you money. You don't get a refund if you fail, and it's a lot of time. Now, that's not to say that the time spent on the course won't be a waste, or that it will be a waste. The comment that was made a couple weeks ago on my blog was basically saying, I wish I had that time back from that course. And to me, the course itself, although I didn't agree with, like, I thought my tutor was a little bit aloof. He didn't really sort of respond. He stopped responding to emails halfway through, basically. And that left me sort of in a lurch. I'm like, I don't really know if I'm doing the right thing here. And like, if he just said, you're not doing the right thing, do this instead, practice more tests, stop reading the textbooks. But he never said that, even though that's what other candidates were saying. Um, the the course for me gave me a structure to follow, and that's about it. That being said, having done the course, because the company paid for it, I still had to pay for the exam fee for the Delta Module 1, which is two 90-minute exams, written tests. You can't, it's not on computer, it's pen and paper. So practice your handwriting, make sure your handwriting is good and neat, and then lots of terminology and do lots of practice tests. I thought it was good because it introduced me to a lot of theory and practical knowledge on how people learn languages. Not English, people learn languages in general. The good thing about this book here, How Languages Are Learned, by again Nina Spada and Patricia P. Light Brown. That book is largely about how languages in general around the world have been learned or are being learned by students currently. So it draws a lot from not ESL materials, not practicum based, not ESL theories. It's all based on language theories and application of different theories in a controlled scientific experiment, and then also how you see people actually learning different languages around the world, be it 4 or 5 different languages, Europe, for example, Africa, parts of Africa as well. Even parts of Southeast Asia have people who are multilingual, polyglots, so to speak, even though they wouldn't be able to teach the language, or they wouldn't even be able to necessarily function in all aspects of the skills in that language. And what do I mean by that? I mean, sorry, my beard is itchy here. What I mean by that is that when someone says they are a polyglot or they're fluent in a language, what do they mean by those two terms? Polyglot. So if you learn a bunch of standard travel phrases in 16 different languages, does that mean that you actually speak those languages? Is that the reference? Is that the inference that you're trying to what YouTube channel are you trying to post to, basically? If someone says that they're fluent in a language, does that mean that they, and fluency to me means that you can see the language, read it, you can hear it, and you could read it out loud, which means you can say it as well. And then also you would be able to understand, well, it means this, that this is the implication of this sentence is that. And not only that, if someone were to read that sentence back to you, if they used different intonations or nuances of the inflection of their speech, that is part of fluency. If you're not that, are you fluent in a language? And that I mean, that's, you're going to have to make a judgment for that. I know in my line of work, fluency comes down to coherence and being able to continue on at a certain speech rate in your speech production. Meaning that if you are speaking a sentence, if you're saying a sentence and you need to reformulate, and it's hard to demonstrate this without sounding really bad, but the example being that if you have to reformulate your words, so if you have to keep on repeating the same words to find what the next word is in the sentence, that is reformulation, and typically is symbolic, or sorry, it demonstrates a lower level of ability to produce language in your target language. Coherence has to do with, even if you reformulate, does it match up? Does the following word match up? So if you are saying the same thing, like what I mean to say, I don't know, excuse me, but just 1 minute, let me think of it. About ropes, like you're going, okay, wait a minute, that's a different topic all of a sudden. that might not match, especially if it's grammatically incorrect in your sentence. It's a bit of a bad example. The book that by Scott Thornbury, the one about language practice for English teachers, that one, that's where you would parse a sentence. Latin classes do this, like any Latin or advanced Greek class, ancient Greek class. Yeah, I'm not sure if a lot of classes do this, but I know Latin did it to an nth degree. Ancient Greek did this a lot. They got off on this whole grammatically parsing sentences. And when you do that, and what I mean by coherence is that this part is the subject, here's the adjectives, or here are the descriptors, and here's the verb. But then all of a sudden, this part sort of falls off. Like that's incoherent. It just becomes an incoherent mess. Same if you're drinking. It's one of those, you become an incoherent mess after a certain number of drinks or a certain volume of intake. So in my line of work, fluency refers to basically, are you still coherent? Are you stringing together sentences and words that make sense together? And are you able to do that at a certain speech rate that doesn't put the other person to sleep? And that is very important when you are speaking and communicating with people, is to not lose their attention, especially speaking, possibly during podcasts and during YouTube presentations as well. I know this topic I've been literally yanked here, how languages are learned, is so interesting, and why I read the whole thing. It does go back to what skills, or how someone learns a language, and then what skills do you need to work on to utilize that language. And what I mean by that is that if you are going to travel to a country, do you need to read and write the language, or do you need to be able to listen and speak the language? Different skill set. Reading and listening are what are called receptive skills. Speaking and writing are productive skills, and that means that you're producing the language, you're actually outputting the language, whereas receptive skills, listening and reading, means that you're taking it in, and it doesn't mean that you have to regurgitate it at all. You don't have to formulate anything from it. Maybe you do, but that's a separate skill. Again, so you can listen to something. If someone asks you a question, you listen. Now, in terms of response, which skill are you going to use? Is it spoken or written, or do you even need to? Does it have to be an action? For example, airports, train stations, directions, riot control. When someone yells something across a megaphone, you don't have to respond to that, but is it considered fluency to be able to understand that and then act on the information that you were just given? In contrast, or similarly, if someone tells you to do something, fill in this piece of paper, and the piece of paper is all in your target language, now you have a listening skill, you have a reading skill, and a writing skill. And if you have a question, that's a speaking skill. You've now used all four skills of that language. So again, going to polyglottism and multilingualism, is that what you're trying to do, or are you trying to get a job in your language? Are you just learning it for fun? Is it an ancient language that not a lot of people use, like Latin and ancient Greek have this sort of stigma as well, Sanskrit. So things like that, where you might not need to learn all of the skills, you might not need to learn everything there is to know about a language, verbs, declensions, nouns, adjectives, grammatically correct sentences, blah, 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 blah. You might not need to know all of that depending on the use case of your language, which goes back to like WTF, Steve. How does this all at all refer to or connect to English teaching and learning English and stuff like that? Well, do you need to know this to teach a language? Do you need to do this if you are going to go live in another country, such as China, such as Korea, where they don't speak English on very much? Yes, they do have an educated population, educated people who can speak the language, but the vast majority, of course, the reason why you have a job is because you're going to go to a country where they want to learn English, and you're the English teacher. So how much of the grammar do you actually have to be able to explain, to explain, not just demonstrate, but explain, and then be able to understand when someone says something wrong? You're like, that's not how we say that. We'd say it now, say it this way instead. So that's something to think about when you are looking at ESL jobs and which country you want to go to, or even whether or not this job is for you, the expat life for you as well. I should touch on that a little bit, that the expat life and the English teacher life, although are similar, are not entirely the same. I mentioned before that teaching English is not a good way to get rich. You can make money. You can make more money than working in a factory in Detroit, but that's not to say that you're going to be retiring rich or young. You might actually have to develop some other skills in that time or learn how to make your money work for you. Now, there are other expat packages, other expat jobs. Management comes to mind, but management in what industry? That would ostensibly pay more. But that would depend more on your own education, skills, qualifications, and what you've been doing with your life up until the fact that you've become an expat. Were you working in the oil and gas industry? Are you working for a gold company? Are you a woodsmith? Are you a carpenter? Are you a translator by trade, like a PhD holder in linguistics or something like that? Each of those might attract or give you opportunities to work in different parts of the world, getting paid very differently from teaching English. That is to say, if you go to a bar in X town in Y country, you might meet other foreigners who are literally making 3 times your salary easily compared to what you're doing as an English teacher or as a language teacher. That's not to say that English teaching or language teaching is that you're going to be impoverished. Far from it. Compared to the local population or compared to your students, many of the students or many of the people that you will meet in that country, you'll be doing quite well. Will you be a schmick expat jet-setting business traveler, working traveler? Not sure about that. You probably will still have to pay for your own apartment. You might have your visa. You probably will have your visa paid for, but you won't have like chauffeur service or room cleaning service and stuff like that. That's all going to be stuff that you're going to have to figure out on your own. So the English teaching job is very much, I hate to say it, like on the lower end of the expat scale, but that is to say, that's not to say that it's a bad job. It's not to say that it's an impossible job. And it's not to say that it's a really fun job, because you do get to meet a lot of people. It will actually put you into contact with a lot of people who literally make lots more money than you do, especially in the Middle East. They will go, teacher, I have no need for this homework, because if you are an example of always doing your homework, I make more than you before I even wake up. And that does happen. There is that sort of demographic that you will face, that you will run into. But then you have to look at it from the other side and go, they're still in class. They still have to learn the language. And if they don't learn the language, either their family business or the company or the country or whatever, like their school, they might not have as many opportunities or available whatever's business opportunities than if they didn't learn English. So they still have to learn English, since it is such a globalized language. It is a business language. It's a very well documented language that enough people know that if you do know English anywhere in the world, someone somewhere will be able to help you. You can't say that about a lot of other languages or a lot of other countries. I mean, yes, there are pockets, and of course, within each region, there are languages that are mainly spoken. But in terms of just sheer accessibility across the world for any number of people, like given any situation, English is the one that is used more often than not. So, should you do it? Yeah, I say go for it. Even post-pandemic, I say go for it. Pick a country, look up some universities, look up some private institutes, see what you think. Whether I have a few videos, I don't have too many videos on this channel talking about the expat life. It's something that I could or I should possibly do a little bit more of. This vlog, like this channel, primarily is about my own language learning journey and learning Mandarin Chinese and Russian. I don't talk too much about what it's like to live in China, because I have been here for 10 years this September, 10 years already. And life has become very normal. That especially since I work from home, I don't go out very much. And as I've gotten older, I don't go to the bars as much. I don't work and travel as much because the pandemic killed that. Since we do work from home again, and things like that, where my life is very normal. Day to day life is probably no different than anybody else anywhere else in the world that has a job, makes money, and works from home. I mean, I guess, the main difference would be that I have to go speak Chinese sometimes, or I have to. Most of the apps that I use are in these funny characters that a lot of them I don't really know. I mean, kind of guessing and pressing different. But I'm like that. What's the experiment where they train the dog to respond to the bell? Like, I know which button to press, and then if it doesn't happen in the right order, I'm like, darn it. I know which characters I should press on and which ones I should not press on. Most times. Now, sometimes I don't know, and I kind of want to see what happens, so I just pick one and there you go. As long as it doesn't delete stuff or say that, well, X amount of money has been removed from your bank account, I think we're pretty good. If you have any questions, concerns, comments about what it's like to teach English overseas, what it's like to live in China, what it's like to live be an expat around the world, mostly in Asia. I've never been to South America, never been to Africa. I hope to change that at some point, hopefully sometime soon, to tell you the truth. Not that I'm going to be leaving China in terms of my life or my living, my work and income just yet. Leave them in the comments below. Be happy to help you out. Be happy to get back to you as well. You can also send me an email, stevenslanguagechannel@gmail.com or stevenslanguagelog@gmail.com as well. I have a newsletter that you can sign up for. I send out weekly emails about what happens on the channel and some helpful articles and tips and resources for language learners in general, regardless of which one you are learning. And then, of course, if you like this video, please subscribe. I hope to be doing some more of these live streams. I was actually thinking of possibly making these into webinars, monthly webinars, where if people like, it's sort of like a round table. I'm not sure if it'd be on Facebook or Zoom or whatever. If you want to join me for half hour, an hour, seems like a decent amount of time to yik yak, to talk the talk, and then answer some questions as well. So subscribe, and then, hey, if you can give this video a like, that'd be awesome, because then it tells the YouTube algo that I'm doing something right, and they should have more than 1 or 2 viewers at one time. All right, folks, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for tuning in today, for watching. And let's see if I do this right. We're going to X that one, X the share screen, and that's it. And the end stream will be there. Thanks again, folks. Again, get in touch. Drop a comment in the comment section if you have any questions or concerns, and I'll be happy to help you out. Not just expat life, but learning English or learning Mandarin Chinese or any other language. All right. Cheers. Thanks again. Do this again. Bye-bye.